breaking news this afternoon. A judge has now signed off on the first step of the appeals process as attorneys continue to try and disqualify Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis from the election interference case. Last week, a judge determined Willis could stay on the case, but only if the lead prosecutor, who she had a romantic relationship with previously, stepped aside. He resigned on Friday afternoon. Now, the judge says while the appeal is still pending, he will continue to address other matters related to the case as prosecutors try and move forward toward a trial. Now it's up to the Georgia Court of Appeals to decide whether or not they will hear this appeal. We'll have much more on what this means for a potential trial coming up starting on 11 Alive News at 4. Now, we did just receive a statement from former President Donald Trump's attorney on this news. He says the defense is optimistic that the review will lead to the case being dismissed and the DA eventually being disqualified. Now, a spokesperson for the DA's office also sent us a statement moments ago saying the office will work toward a trial, moving toward a trial as quickly as possible.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about some good news here coming from the cowardly judge, Mr. Scott McAfee, who decided not to disqualify Fani Willis from the RICO case against Trump because he probably was afraid of the woke revolutionaries boohoo, whining, crying racism and destroying his chances of getting reelected in democratically dominated Fulton County. Okay, this judge was up for re-election, and he decided to humiliate Fani Willis in his ruling regarding her disqualification. However, he did not go as far as to require her to step down as the prosecutor of the case or to disqualify her from the case. Instead, he gave her an out, okay? He basically said, look, you have to go or Nathan Wade has to go. Pick which one. Now, of course, Fani Willis chose Nathan Wade, or Nathan Wade chose himself technically because Nathan Wade has resigned, okay? He has stepped down from the case. However, again, in this ruling, the judge left the door open for an appeal because he says that, hey, there is an odor of mendacity, a.k.a. I smell a liar, okay? I mean, he kind of outright accused Nathan Wade of being a liar, but did not go as far as to accuse Fani Willis of being a liar, but did say that, hey, you know, they may have lied under oath, which is kind of hilarious to me because it's like, well, if you believe that Nathan Wade is a liar, how can you not believe that Fani Willis is a liar? Because she basically agreed with what Nathan Wade said, okay? I mean, Nathan Wade's story was Fani Willis's story. So the judge, in my opinion, was protecting Fani Willis, maybe because he donated to her political campaign. Maybe he's trying to save his own chances of re-election because, again, I mean, if he actually would have done the right thing, if he would have had the cojones to disqualify Fani Willis, the woke revolutionaries would have come out to woodwork with protests, maybe some riots. They would have said that he's a white supremacist, he's a Klansman. You know, they would have called him the Grand Cyclops of the KKK, all that stuff, right? They would have said all types of things about this judge, okay? They would have destroyed him had he done the right thing, okay? So, again, the reason why you know that the judge is cowardly is because he left the door open for somebody else to do it, right? He says, well, I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to humiliate Fani Willis enough. I'm going to beat her up enough so that somebody else can do it, whether that be the Georgia Republicans who have just signed into law this new kind of, I guess, commission where they can remove Fani Willis, okay? They can remove these rogue DAs, which, you know, who knows, maybe they will, maybe they won't actually do that, but we'll see. However, the other process that he left the door open to was an appeal because, again, you know, it's not just the court that matters, it's also the court of public opinion that matters, okay? And like he said in his ruling, there is an odor of mendacity, okay? These people may have lied under oath, okay? And that can be a threat to the integrity of the court, okay? The public may not trust the process considering how it seems like the prosecutor in this case may have lied under oath, okay? She should be held to the highest of standards. But because she's a liberal black woman, they don't believe in standards, right? Liberal black women do not have standards, okay? You don't have to hold them to the same standards as you hold everybody else, okay? This is kind of how it goes, right? The white man, Trump, is held to the highest of standards, okay? The highest of standards, okay? He doesn't get any leeway, okay? But, the liberal black woman, on the other hand, she's held to the lowest of standards, okay? I mean, she can be as unprofessional as possible, okay? She can clearly be corrupt, sleeping around with a guy that she hired and paid to go after her political opponent, a clear conflict of interest, and she can get away with it, right? And if you question it, then you're a racist, then you're sexist, okay? So, again, that's the world that we're living in, right? So with that being said, the judge, again, has granted the opportunity for the Trump team to appeal, okay, to appeal immediately. And again, one of the reasons why he's doing that is because he didn't have the cojones to disqualify her himself. So he wants to make sure that he got the decision right. Again, and the way that he does that is through granting the immediate appeal, along with all of the damning things he wrote about Fani Willis in his ruling. And again, that leaves the door open to the Trump team continuing to try to challenge this case and quite possibly just pushing it back past the election, which looks like that's what's going to happen. And that's not what they want, right? That is the last thing that the liberal media, the Democrats, the establishment want. So without further ado, we're going to listen to Miss Ashley Merchant, who's a part of the Trump legal team, discuss with CNN the appeals process and what they're appealing, why they're appealing, and their plans moving forward.
As the nation did as well, that entirety of the trial, you had this motion to disqualify the Fulton County DA. As you know, it failed. The judge said that you did not meet your burden of trying to prove that she had a conflict of interest that would hurt a right to a fair trial. Now, you are appealing that decision, but tell me, on what grounds are you going to appeal?
We're appealing it on a couple different grounds. We definitely thought that there was evidence of forensic misconduct. So we thought that the judge got that wrong and that there was evidence that based on a couple things that she did. One of them was this, what we call the church speech. After I filed the motion and before it actually was responded to, she went at Martin Luther King Jr. Day, she went in front of the church and actually gave this speech, this almost like sermon, where she was talking about my motives, talking about my client's motives, talking about the different factors of the case, that she had hired 3 different people and that we were only calling out one and that it must be racist. And so that was one count. There was also a book that she gave some unprecedented access to the authors into the decision-making room where she made decisions on this indictment. So we thought that was forensic misconduct. But that plus the relationship and plus the way that everyone testified, the manner that they testified, we think all of that was enough to show that she should be removed from this case.
Yeah, so again, the argument that she's making, more specifically, is that, when you look at that church speech in which she's boohoo whining crying racism against the defense, that can taint the jury pool, okay? Because, when you have a black woman going to a black church in Fulton County, Atlanta, a primarily black city, in which the jury most likely is probably going to be primarily black, how can you have a fair trial when she's basically telling people that, hey, the people that are coming after me, the people that I'm trying to, charge and find guilty, they're racist, right? These people are racist, okay? Which could make it basically very difficult for a jury pool to be unbiased, okay? So the argument is that she's tainting the jury pool, right? It's not possible for Trump to have a fair trial in Fulton County when you have the lead prosecutor here essentially trying to say that, well, the people that I'm going after, they're racist, right? So, again, that is what she means by forensic misconduct. And, the judge essentially acknowledged that what she did was improper, except that it was legal, okay? Legally improper, right? So, again, this is just another example of how this judge didn't have the stones to do the right thing here, and this is why they have to appeal. Yeah.
And yet, Ashley, the judge did not agree with you on a number of those aspects. I mean, the church speech in particular, he did address that notion, did believe that it may have had an impact on a jury pool. But of course, it was a prospective one that was in the distant future. But on the issues, particularly of the misconduct and the witnesses themselves, you had witnesses who took the stand. There were a couple that really stood out to me. One was the former employee of the DA's office. There weren't many follow-up questions to corroborate when she had seen them kiss or hug in that respect. Also, you had the former law partner and friend and lawyer of Nathan Wade, Terrence Bradley, I believe. And it seemed as though he was refusing to admit much of the conversations you claimed to have had with him. Even he was evasive. He did not want to answer questions citing privilege. Do you think he led you astray, and did you misjudge the quality of his testimony?
No, and you know why? I know Terrence. I've known him for many years. I think he was truthful in his conversations with me. And if you look at how things happen, you look at the timeline, he was talking to me. He was very truthful. He had a lot of context. And that's one of the things that we look for when we're evaluating credibility. Do you have context to what you're telling? And he would tell me things and then give me context, give me details that only someone who actually had firsthand knowledge would know. And I was also able to corroborate a lot of things. So he gave me details such as Robin Yurdy. He led me to Robin Yurdy, and I was able to actually corroborate Robin Yurdy, corroborate the condo. He had led me to that. So those were things that told me that he was telling me the truth. But when he was on the stand...
Oh, excuse me. I was going to go to that very point. I'm sure you're going the same way. He may have led you to believe that prior to actually taking the stand, but the first time we saw him, he was saying that he couldn't say anything without the bar of Georgia essentially giving him an opinion that he could, had an in-camera conversation with the judge about this very issue. And really, I mean, it was no easy feat trying to get him to answer a single one of your questions, even when you sent him a text message.
Right. It was very difficult. And I could tell when he was testifying, he looked at me and said, I'm trying to save my law license. And I knew based on the timeline that the weekend before he had received a phone call from Mr. Wade to his best friend who had reminded him of his privilege. So at that point I knew, and you can almost tell my demeanor changed in my questioning at that point, because when he said that, I knew that he was worried about protecting his law license and he was not going to explain anything in detail. And so it was gonna be incumbent upon me to pull out those text messages and to remind him of everything that we had talked about.
Yeah, so he was threatened, basically, in a nutshell, and he's a coward as well, too, right? As you guys can see in the videos, this guy is sweating his ass off while he's being questioned. And again, this guy, he decided at the last minute to fold, right? After basically spilling the beans, okay, being a whistleblower, okay, being the star witness, he decides that at the last minute he wants to save Fani and Nathan Wade because he's afraid of, being punished, right? And there's also some evidence to suggest that he had been meeting with, Nathan Wade before this, okay, and they probably were discussing how they're going to try to finesse this case. So, again, it's a series of unfortunate events, but that dude clearly and obviously, he was obstructing justice, right, in my opinion. I'll go that far with it.
Are you suggesting that whatever phone call may have been made by Nathan Wade through a best friend as intermediary to his former counsel was somehow witness tampering, or are you just saying that he was reminding him of an attorney-client relationship?
Well, we made those allegations in court that we didn't make the allegations that it was actually witness tampering, but he did call who was under subpoena and told him through a friend to pass along a message to remind him that he had privilege. And so I do think that was something that that Mr. Bradley internalized, and that was the first time I had heard privilege. So prior to that, we had never heard the term privilege in all of our conversations, and we've been talking for months. The term privilege had never come up. That had never been something where, Mr. Bradley had said, oh, let me tell you this, but it's privilege. Nothing like that. So the first time that word even came up was when Mr. Wade interjected it into the conversation.
I wonder if there was more than one goal here. Because on the one hand, disqualification was certainly the goal. It was stated as such in your motion. But it seemed as though another goal was to perhaps fatally undermine the credibility of this prosecution team, which frankly is the right of defense counsel to zealously advocate for their clients. Do you think you were successful in trying to undermine the credibility of the prosecuting team?
Absolutely, 100%, right? 100%. Fani Willis is a disgrace, okay? I mean, she got charges thrown out just because she was not specific enough. She was too vague in regards to what she was actually charging the defense with, okay? And again, it was so embarrassing that even CNN was roasting her. But normally in a normal situation, if we weren't living in Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs world, she would have been disqualified, but if she wasn't disqualified, she'd have a hard time getting reelected, okay? However, because she's in Fulton County, we all know how they feel about holding black women accountable, especially now that she's boohooing and crying racism, and every black church in Fulton County is basically coming out and defending her. I mean, they're having whole sermons about Fani Willis. and, you know, trying to defend her and her nonsense, which is a disgrace to the church, right? This is why the church isn't taken seriously anymore.
I don't care how pretty you look, how made up you look, how degreed you are. I don't care how much money in the bank. I don't care how many connections you have. I don't care how high you think you are. You're still a Negro in America. Well, it ain't about Fani. Oh, the lynching wasn't just about the person that was hanging from the lynching tree. No, the lynching was a message to the community to let us know that there go you if you don't stay in your place. And some of y'all black folks, when you see us being lynched, you think it's some legitimacy to it. You think we've done something because you're chasing the phantom. You think that we can do something to always be included. You know, that thing was racist because they were trying to act like black women can't have cash on them. And I know being around black women, y'all carry cash in some strange places. I seen y'all. I seen you reach in your bra. I seen you do it. She said, I got this money through my blood, sweat, and tears.
If it had not been for the Lord, Georgia's Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, the prosecutor for the Donald Trump case, would not have said, I'm not on trial here. No matter how hard you try to put me on trial, these people should be on trial for trying to steal the election in 2020. If it had not been for the Lord.
Just this week, we saw a group of white attorneys trying to publicly lynch District Attorney Fani Willis in all her black womanness on national TV.
Yeah, she probably will get reelected, okay? Even despite the fact that she's clearly and obviously embarrassed herself. So, I mean, yeah, they've definitely, from a national perspective, nationwide perspective, she is disgraced. Will it affect her in Fulton County in regards to reelection? Probably not, right? But on a national stage, among her peers, everybody knows that this woman is in over her skis, right? She's not the brightest bulb, okay?
Well, that was never a goal, and it's unfortunate that their conduct is what led to that, but we did uncover a lot of conduct that I do think undermined their credibility, rightfully so. I think there's a lot of questions on their credibility. I think there's a lot of questions on misspending. There were a lot of things that we were not able to bring because it wasn't relevant. So there were a lot of questions that you would hear objected to, and I was not able to go into because of relevance, particularly the money issues. So we weren't able to establish all of that because we weren't permitted to go into that because of relevancy grounds. But I do think that now there's a lot of other entities that are investigating, and they'll be able to determine, hopefully, whether or not there was any misspending of public money, whether or not there were any other things that were going on that were illegal.
Of course, that was what the judge pointed out in terms of the relevancy and thinking about normally if there is an issue of credibility or otherwise, you take them down to the bar, the Georgia State bar I'm talking about, not the drinking kind, to deal with ethical issues of this nature. But on that point, you really didn't think that bringing up and having a motion to disqualify Nathan Wade and Fani Willis as the DA based on what you said was, a lack of candor and really intimating lying to the court, that would have an impact on their credibility?
Oh, no, I definitely knew that would have an impact. What I said was that's not my goal. So that wasn't my goal. And, it's one of those things as a defense lawyer, when you have information, you sit there and you think, if I do not use this, if I don't file this motion, no matter what harm it does to me, if I don't file that, am I going to one day be on the stand testifying at a post-conviction hearing, explaining why I had all this information and why I had case law to back it up and I didn't file that motion? And so that's what we're in a position. A lot of folks don't, who have never done what we do, who've never done defense work, may not understand that when we have this information, and Mr. Bradley called me and gave me all this information, I followed up on it and I tracked it all down. But once I had all that and I had the case law that supported my arguments, I had a duty to bring that motion. So if I had not done that, I actually would have been deficient in my own performance.
Well, the judge did not think you met the burden, but taking a big picture for a second, I mean, we all remember this moment when Fani Willis, the DA, held up the paperwork and the motions, actually requested the motions that she could hold up for you in court. You accused her of lying. She accused you of the same in open court. How do you respond to that?
I mean, at the time, I wasn't the one who was testifying. I very much wish I could have been testifying. And so that was difficult because, when you're an advocate and you're in court, you're asking the questions, you don't really get the opportunity to testify. And I had to wait until the judge ruled, out of fairness, until he ruled on the motion before I could actually address those issues. But it's very unfortunate when someone is calling you something and you know that it's not true and you can't really defend yourself.
That seemed to be her point too, right?
Right. Well, but she had the opportunity on the stand. She had the opportunity on the stand. She had the ability to bring other evidence. If she wanted, she could have brought other evidence. And I can tell you, if someone was accusing me of having an affair that I wasn't having, and I had evidence such as text records, such as phone records, such as credit card receipts, you better believe I would have brought that to court.
Well, that's interesting because, I might hold you to that when you talk about whether your own client will take the stand in his own defense, because one could argue if you don't have the burden of proof, you don't have to do anything to do so. But I'll move on for a second on that point.
Well, ultimately, Ms. Ashley Merchant vindicated herself because the judge found that Nathan Wade or Fani Willis had to be disqualified. Okay, so, Ashley Merchant, she's not the liar here, right? The liar is the woman that the judge claims still has an odor of mendacity, around her, which could taint the whole trial. At the very least, it does challenge the integrity of the prosecution, of the court. And I think that this is going to be a problem for them, I'm not entirely sure how you require Nathan Wade to be disqualified, but not Fani Willis. So with that being said, it'll be interesting to see how the Trump team approaches the appeal process. I think at the very least, the appeals process will definitely help them push this trial back until after the election, which is probably the worst case scenario at this point, right? That is what we're looking at in regards to a worst case scenario. Best case scenario is that they overturn the judge and they actually disqualify Fani Willis. However, I wouldn't get my hopes up, right? I don't get my hopes up for anything really happening to these leftist lunatics. They're never held accountable for anything. So we'll see, but best of luck to the Trump team. And I'm looking forward to continuing to cover this current situation down in Georgia with Trump and this Fani Willis situation. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.